So in this video I played Resident Evil 5 in 2023 for the first time. I'll be giving an overall review and my thoughts on the game to let you know if it's still worth checking out 14 years since its release in 2009. As this game of course hasn't been remade yet, which it most likely will from the teaser at the end of the RE4 remake, but we still have to wait a little as the last remake only came out 4 months ago, and this is the first original game in the series where I play through every single Resident Evil game for the first time. All the others I've done videos on have been remakes, so it will be interesting to see how much this game holds up. If you're going to enjoy or find this video helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you like story games then I have various reviews on the channel on a bunch. Now let's jump into Resident Evil 5. Now not only is the look of this game going to feel different because it's so much older and it isn't remade, but also because overall Resident Evil 5 is one of the least popular games in the franchise now, with very little talk compared to the others, though it seems at the time it wasn't, with it being the best selling Resident Evil game ever. However, over the years there's been lots of talk that this game was when the franchise started to fall off a little bit until RE7 picked it back up, but I'm going to sort of try and take that mindset out of my head to allow for a honest review about if I think it holds up now. Although it's much more simple compared to the previous games I reviewed, I'll mention the gameplay features, story, visuals, etc. So starting off, just like in RE4, we have a brand new setting from Raccoon City and Spain. Resident Evil 5 is all set in the region of West Africa, where we follow the main protagonist of Chris Redfield. Once he's been dispatched by the BSSA with the main goal of stopping bioterrorism, he meets Sheva Olamar, who's part of the same organisation. Upon teaming up as partners, you're told that your main goal is to investigate the new bioweapon called Ouroboros, where you're told to gain more information from a man named Irvin. So straight away you're off to find him, and obviously like every game in the series, it doesn't go very smoothly, with the majority of the area all being infected by a new strain. Almost instantly you're surrounded by waves of zombies who you have to shoot until you progress. Every now and then, usually when it's a big swarm, other agents in the organisation will assist you in their helicopter. A little later on you encounter the bioweapon and have to defeat it with the help of a furnace, as well as a bunch of other enemy types along the way, which I'll mention more in gameplay later. After one of the helicopters have been destroyed, a bunch of agents come to the rescue, one of them being Josh, who also provides information and helps the duo progress. Sheva used to be partners with Josh, therefore has a lot of trust in him and saves you multiple times in the story. It's only a short moment when you eventually meet with Irvin for the first time, however you'll of course reunite throughout. Though this isn't the villain of the game, the main antagonist would be Albert Wesker, who's an incredible villain that added a lot to this game's story and plot. He's extremely powerful as the Ouroboros virus grants him more strength, meaning like all the other villains you'll meet him over and over and you never really know when it will be over, because it seems like he can end it at any moment, as well as Chris and Sheva becoming extremely close, but he somehow survives. To add to this power, his arms can transform into long tentacles that allow him to absorb metallic objects to use as weaponry. Unlike the Nemesis and Mr. X, in his base stage he looks and seems the most normal, but it's so creepy yet cool seeing him evolve over time, wondering what on earth else he can do. What seems to be more involved in this story is the amount of extra information you can uncover and deep meaning behind everything. From the build up of the virus, the tribes you encounter, the Umbrella organization and a lot more, you gain so much more from the extra documents and items you find that are dotted around throughout the whole story. However, of course there's a lot involved in cutscenes as well, and the various flashbacks that add so much more. The documents and huge amount of text could be sort of boring to some players, yet I'm sure players who love the meaning behind it all and the lore of the franchise will really appreciate it. This game really focuses a lot more on it seems, or at least that's what it felt like. Yes, they could have expanded on it for it to be more interesting rather than the majority being from documents. However, it is an old game for a start and not everyone would want to see it. The other big aspect of this game is that it was pretty much made for co-op, which is where things get a little Some people say that this should have been a sequel to RE4 if everything is based on a co-op playthrough, that being the inventory management, the combat, etc., which is nowhere near what any of the RE games are like. They're always solo game following a zombie horror story. In this game, both of those things are stripped away. The solo part and, to be honest, the horror part, which you can see how much that would change fans' views on the franchise, with very two big aspects being completely overhauled. Then I know there's many people that would say it's different and change in pace, which is new from the same formula. Well, I do see where they're coming from, however it's a bit too much. This game really does feel like a totally new game even though it's a sequel to RE4. RE4 had a lot of change from 3 with a totally new world and much more action, but it still felt like a continuation from 3. But I'm aware that co-op a lot of people love, lore a lot of people love, and action a lot of people love, so this game is extremely diverse. It would have also been nice to see some character development with the characters. I do understand that it's an old game and this is another reason why it needs remaking. The characters don't really grow over time and don't grip you as much, and as with the gameplay, it does mean that this game is good in co-op. In solo, oh boy, Sheva is really a nuisance. Now of course she is needed for the story, though when fighting, and especially when this game has the most action, she gets in the way all of the time, is pretty much extra room in your inventory, and can heal you. There were so many times where she didn't follow me and went a completely different way, or didn't heal me when she had heals, and just useless really. But as I said, the gameplay is built around co-op, so I'm aware that there is people who play the game with a friend who really enjoyed it, which is one of the biggest aspects to why this game doesn't work as a sequel. For people that play solo, it's hell and very infuriating to play with an AI. Now I know in RE4 you play with an AI as well, however it's pretty much fine because Ashley doesn't really do much. She doesn't try to take down enemies, save you when you're grabbed, or use any of her items you pick up. The whole aim of the game is that you escort her and protect her. It's so annoying and completely strips the immersion from RE5. I do want to talk about the combat as well, which, because this game is so old now and the overall movement can feel very slow, clunky and not smooth, with the sheer amount of enemies you have to take down, this can be very difficult to play. Of course the animations could be smoother and varied, but I don't want to be too harsh with an old game like this. I was aware that the movement could feel a bit clunky, though when they thought about adding this many enemies at once, they must have thought about adding a dodge or a roll button, but I guess they didn't. However, they did follow the upgraded melee system from 4, and it even added more. You can break free from an enemy to then stun them, and can perform various punches like uppercuts and hooks on the enemy, as well as kicks, which was really fun. In co-op you can perform melee combos together with your partner, and they do work well, but with the AI when you get grabbed, she doesn't always help you and definitely doesn't feel as satisfying as it is with another player, where you both synchronize the combo. The item management system does feel very easy to use, and as I mentioned, it does feel like extra storage space when playing with an AI. I'm sure in co-op it's great and your partner can easily give you items and ammo and can easily heal you. The AI does the same but doesn't always heal you right away, and it isn't always smooth to pull up her item storage to then request for more ammo. Switching through your items on the go feels easy and fairly basic by alternating between numbers that the item is placed on. However, this also means you have to know what items are in which of the 9 slots. Overall, it wasn't really that bad and expected with the age of the game. There's also treasure items just like in RE4, which I really love the idea of, actually having more of a reason to explore more so that you could combine the treasures to increase their value, but for some reason that's completely taken away in this game and all you do is sell it as it is, which was a shame as it's such a simple feature but just added that bit more, which had nothing wrong with it. There's a good selection of weaponry in this game as well, which adds to that engagement and fun when constantly taking down more hordes than ever before. This list is actually varied with lots to choose. There's 4 pistols including the M93R, which has so many attachments, a laser, a barrel, a grip with a folding stock for auto fire, but can also shoot 3-round bursts when held down, but can also be shot individually when low on ammo, which is good. 4 shotguns, 2 assault rifles and 2 SMGs, 3 snipers which are great to use as there's multiple moments where the enemies are spread out far away, a deagle and a revolver, grenade and rocket launcher as well as the longbow and Gatling gun, so a huge amount of variation to experiment with, and does add to that replayability mixed with the action as mentioned, though also not that different than RE4. There's a little more of weapon types we've all seen before, but I feel like this is the list that will stay roughly the same for the next few games. I don't see why they would add or remove any, but we'll see. The same goes with throwables, all the ones we've seen are there, but with the additional incendiary grenade. These weapon types mean you have to switch over to others depending on the enemy types, just like usual, and there's a good amount too. The basic zombie in the game is called the Town Regini. As usual, they're humans under the control of the parasite, and follow the same attacking style of RE4 with axes, machetes, forks in their hands for weapons, but can also group. That's shown a little bit in how they approach you, with either one going round the side of a barrier for example, showing there's a small bit of intelligence still there. And then there's another stage when you do enough damage to the host that the plaga will mutate and burst out, just as seen this before. And then Kipios, I think, are from Reginis that mutate into a flying creature with 4 wings and use their long tail to strike, and also work in groups, just like when collectively taking down the chopper. Aduls are are zombie dogs we've all seen before, however this time their heads split open when shot and the Plaga bursts out of them to attack ferociously. The Executioner is basically a brute in RE4, which uses heavy armor and heavy weapons like huge hammers and maces, of course a lot tougher to take down. And then Ouroboros, which I mentioned, are basically piles of tentacles, but after their weak point is open, that being their orange core, they can easily be taken down. Big main Maginis are giant strong Maginis similar to Executioners with the heavy weapons. A familiar fate once again of the Chainsaw Magini. There's many other Maginis like motorbikes ones that throw molotovs as well, wetlands Maginis, giant Maginis and base Maginis. The majority of the rest are all boss enemies. The boss fights were slightly disappointing in this game. They honestly don't play out like a typical boss fight, or at least don't have the same effect. There's no real build up or end moment after you eventually defeat them, and there's a lot in this game, some being quite difficult as well, but it feels like there was no thought in adding them in there randomly placed in random moments just as a filler, which isn't really what a boss fight should be, therefore once again taking away that immersion you'd probably get before. And I think that's where I wrap up my review of Resident Evil 5 in 2023, a very different game, that's safe to say. It's very diverse, with a overhaul in formula by building the gameplay all around co-op and not putting really any thought into a solo game, as well as the stripped away horror due to the overwhelming amount of action in this game, which does make sense when played as a duo, as you can both easily take down these hordes as a team. Overall there was way too much change in everything that doesn't work as a sequel and more of a standalone game. There were good parts as mentioned, but overall as a game, the negatives outweigh the positives. Now does this mean that it's not worth playing and doesn't hold up? If you play it as a co-op, then that will significantly improve the experience, which makes sense as the gameplay and the combat is what you do so much of in this game, and a major aspect, so if you don't play as a duo, then it leaves a giant hole in the gameplay combined with all the other aspects that were poor. It's too much for it to be enjoyable and worth playing in my opinion, but that's just me. Hopefully if you've watched through the whole of this video, taking in all the aspects, you've reached a final verdict. It's a shame because compared to the other games, that's of course talking about the original, and as an overall, this feels like such a downgrade. Hopefully the remake significantly improves the game, but there's a lot to change, so we'll have to see, especially as they base this game on co-op. It would mean changing the entire gameplay structure. If you enjoyed or found this video helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you enjoy story games, then that's what this channel is all about, with an array of videos on the channel on a selection of games, with a random playlist of a series in the description down below. Thank you for watching until the very end. This also means that Resident Evil 6 is up next, which I'm very intrigued about. Until then, bye bye.